I'm going to try to make a really quick tutorial on how to create a segue and pass information from one view controller to the other. So I'm going to start with a single view app. I'll call it Segue Practice 1. I'm going to start on my main storyboard, and on my main storyboard I am going to put a label, a button, a text field. I'm going to add another view controller. Oops, there we go. On the new view controller I will add a label. And I'll add a button as well. Alright, so I think I've got all my components. Since I added a new view controller, I need to add a file that's going to control that view controller. So over here in Segue Practice, I'm going to do a right click, add new file. It will be a Cocoa Touch class because it's going to be a subclass of view controller. So here it says subclass of UI view controller. That's what I want. I'm going to call it second view controller. And then with this view controller highlighted, I'm going to go into the identity inspector and I'm going to select second view controller from that drop down. This links this view controller with the file I've created. Let me drag that file up with the other Swift files so they're all together. Okay, that looks good. Let us create our segue. So when I'm going to create my segue, I'm going to come up to the top. This yellow button right here on the view controller. I'm going to do a control click and drag to my new view controller. It's going to be a manual segue. I'll click show. I'm going to name it. I'll name it word segue because I'm going to be passing a word from one view controller to the other. Alright, got it a name identifier so I can refer to it. That looks good. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to connect the components, the objects that I put on my view controller. So in my main view controller, I'm going to connect the text field, control, click, and drag. I'll call it text field 1. And I'm going to connect the button. Call it segue button. And I want to create a variable on this view controller. I'll call it word, and I'll have it be equal to a blank string. And let me connect the objects. And I'm going to do a little bit of code cleanup on this new view controller. We don't need this right here, so I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to connect the label, control, click, and drag the label over to like line 12 or 13. I will call it word label. That looks good. And I'll connect the button as well. I'm going to call it unwind segue button. And I also have to put a variable on the second view controller as well, and that variable I'm going to call word passed because we're going to pass the word from the first view controller to the second view controller. And I want that to be string. I'm not going to give it a value. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to say it will have a value and it will be a string. And let me go to my main view controller. So I think we're all set up. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a function called prepare for segue. And in this function right here, I'm going to pass the information from one segue to the other. So I'm going to say let NVC, NVC standing for next view controller, and I'm going to have it equal to segue dot destination as second view controller. Make sure I'm using second view controller because that's what I called my second view controller. Make sure you're using the correct name there. And then I'm going to write NVC dot word passed is going to be equal to word. And this is when I pass the information from one view controller over to the other. Segue button press. What I want to happen here is I want to assign the information from the text field into the word, so the variable word. So variable word will be equal to text field 1.text. So I'll store the word text field in here. I'm going to have to put an exclamation mark on that, promising that there'll be some information there. And next, what I have to do is I have to perform that segue. So I'm going to perform the segue. The string, the identifier was word segue, I think. I'm going to write in, I'm going to write in word segue, but I'm going to go to my main storyboard really quick and just check to make sure that's what I called it. Yep. I can see right up here in the identifier that I called it word segue. So that is what I want to write in right here, word segue. And sender nil. And that looks correct. So now I'm going to go to my second view controller. And when the view loads, what I want is I want my label to show that word that I just entered. So word label dot text is equal to word passed. And I'm going to test out my app really quickly to see how it's working. We tested our program and we were able to pass information from one view controller to the other, from one screen to the other. So now what we want to do is we want to get this home button working. So we hit the button on the second screen, we'll go back to the first screen. The first step in that process is we are going to go into the main view controller file and we're going to type @ Okay, we type that IB action, which is a function here. Next, we go into the storyboard. And from this yellow button, we're going to control, click, and drag over to the exit. And click unwind to first view controller with segue. This is the exit right here. When you do that, it will show up over here, unwind to first view controller with segue. We need to give it an identifier. I'm going to use unwind to first view controller. In the spelling here, you want to make sure that it's spelled correctly. I am going to copy it. And now that we have that identifier in there, unwind to first view controller, we're going to put that in the second view controller. When this button is pressed, we've already connected the button. I think we called it unwind segue button. we're going to write self dot perform segue with identifier. The identifier is going to be unwind to first view controller, and the sender's nil. And when we do those steps, we should be able to hit the button and return back to the first screen. And you see we come back to the first screen, so our home button works. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this really quick tutorial on segues, passing information, and creating a home button. Thanks for watching.